My wife held the package out without looking at me. Just a plastic-wrapped bundle dangling from 2 fingers while her eyes looked past my shoulder at someone else. I opened it in front of everyone. A pair of cheap fabric socks, $6.99, a red clearance sticker still on the tag, and just across the room, resting on the wrist of the man she had been sleeping with for 8 months, was the $14,000 watch she had personally chosen, wrapped, and handed to him like a sacred offering. It was the exact watch I had once mentioned as the gift I wanted for my 50th birthday. The entire room went dead silent, not a single word from anyone. Then Vivian leaned close to my ear, close enough that only I could hear, and whispered the sentence I will carry with me for the rest of my life. You know why, don't you? Looking at her face, I didn't see guilt or cruelty. It was something far worse, absolute certainty. This public humiliation wasn't a sudden impulse, it was a calculated execution. Instead of breaking, I simply smiled, thanked her, and held those cheap socks like a man who had just received the final piece of evidence he needed. My name is Thomas. I am 54 years old, and before 5 that morning, I was gone, leaving something under that Christmas tree that would make her scream when she found it. To understand how we ended up on that rooftop, you have to understand who Vivian used to be. When I met her in 2001 at a Chicago design firm, she was brilliant, sharp, and possessed a rare clarity. But I fell in love with her private side, the woman who cried at airport farewells and kept every card I ever gave her in a shoebox under the bed. Over the next 23 years, her health tech startup Meridian Solutions exploded from a 12-person team into a massive enterprise on South Wacker Drive. I willingly carried the weight behind the scenes, shifting my own architecture consulting to part-time, hosting her board members, and drafting midnight pitch decks just so she could shine. My mistake was assuming she still valued our partnership. Over the past year, subtle changes slipped into our marriage, a new perfume, an unfamiliar tilt of her head while looking at her phone, and a cold, low-grade irritability directed toward me. At the company holiday party, Vivian immediately drifted into the crowd, leaving me at the bar. Across the room, I watched her laugh with Nathan Yee, her 29-year-old executive assistant, who had become indispensable with unsettling speed. When the gift exchange began, Vivian pulled a long navy case from a high-end boutique out from under the tree. Her voice adopted that warm, private tone she used to reserve for me as she presented Nathan with the $14,000 Audemars Piguet watch. The room erupted in applause while I stood perfectly still, hollowed out. Then she called me over to hand me the $6.99 drugstore socks in front of everyone we knew. If you have ever been in a room where someone looks right through you with total indifference, you know it is the loneliest feeling in the world. Hatred means you still register. Indifference means you are just a chore to be managed. On the silent drive home, I thought about everything I had sacrificed for her. The miscarriage we never spoke about, the contracts I passed up, the garden I tended alone. If you have ever given your all to someone who treated you like an afterthought, subscribe, because some stories deserve to be heard. Once we got home, Vivian retreated straight to her office and I went to bed. At 2:47 a.m., her phone buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand. She had placed it face down, a telling shift from her usual habit. I turned it over and saw a message from Nathan. "Tonight was everything. You handled it exactly right. I can't wait until you're finally done with him." I didn't feel rage. I felt a deep, quiet grief. The excuses I had spent years making for her ran out all at once. I quietly went to my study, a room Vivian dismissively labeled my hobby corner. That dismissal was her oversight, because she never knew what I kept in the bottom drawer. Behind old photographs, I pulled out a manila envelope I had methodically compiled over 18 months. Inside were bank statements showing massive cash withdrawals from our joint account, hotel receipts from the Kimpton Grey downtown, and credit card charges for luxury jewelry that never ended up in her collection. Looking at them in the quiet of the morning, the truth was undeniable. She was funding her affair with our shared life savings. I photographed every page, then sat down to write a letter on the expensive linen stationery she always found too sentimental to use. By 5:15 a.m., my car was packed with my father's watch, my hard drive, and my vital documents. I left the sealed envelope directly under the Christmas tree where the socks had been and drove north into the freezing December darkness. The letter detailed everything: the hotels, the affair, and the fact that my divorce attorney was already drafting the paperwork. It also revealed a separate savings account containing $214,000 of my own untracked consulting income and a specific property clause in a mortgage refinancing agreement she had absent-mindedly signed months earlier while distracted on a phone call. I had learned from watching Vivian for over 2 decades that gentleness is not a shield. To survive people who use you, you have to stop being unprotected. Crossing the Wisconsin border, I finally turned my phone back on. It exploded with 39 missed calls and 51 texts, charting a frantic descent from denial to absolute panic as she realized her access to the bank accounts was frozen. I want to be completely honest with you. What I did next wasn't out of cruelty, but a desire for natural consequences to finally land where they belonged. I sent a single photograph of Vivian and Nathan entering the hotel to a woman named Carla Yee, Nathan's wife. The next morning, Carla and I met at a coffee shop in Evanston. Instead of a broken woman, I found someone like myself, methodical, composed, and ready to act. If you've ever had to find the strength to rebuild your life from the ashes of a betrayal, take a moment to subscribe so we can walk through these turning points together. Carla opened her laptop and showed me the missing pieces of the puzzle. Nathan hadn't just been stepping out on his marriage. He had been charging his personal expenses, luxury dinners, and that very $14,000 watch to a corporate credit card. Carla had already filed for divorce, arranging for Nathan to be served publicly at Meridian's weekly staff briefing the following morning. When the papers were delivered in front of 12 senior executives, HR simultaneously received the corporate fraud report. Nathan was instantly exposed and fired on the spot. Vivian did exactly what I expected. She played the corporate diplomat, expressing professional concern while completely denying any knowledge of his actions to protect herself. But her self-preservation backfired. By denying knowledge of the affair, she forced HR to dig deeper into the digital authorization trail. They discovered she had personally approved the fraudulent expenses. 3 weeks after the Christmas party, the board forced Vivian to resign from the very company she had built from the ground up, forcing her to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement in exchange for a meager severance. Her 20-year legacy vanished in a single afternoon. 4 months later, Nathan was sentenced to 18 months of supervised probation and ordered to pay full restitution, while Carla's ironclad prenuptial agreement left him with nothing but his shared debt. 6 months after walking out, I was painting the porch of my secluded cabin in Door County when Vivian's car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out wearing plain jeans and flat shoes, her defensive corporate armor entirely gone. She looked exhausted and fragile. We sat on the porch swing, and she quietly confirmed everything Carla had told me. She admitted she had sacrificed Nathan to save herself, only to end up sitting alone in a parking garage, loathing what she had become. When I asked her why our life hadn't been enough, she looked down. She told me she had stopped seeing me as a person with needs because I was always too steady, too capable, and never complained. Nathan, conversely, fed her ego by relying on her power and status. "You confused being wanted with being loved," I told her softly. She didn't deny it. She mentioned the house was facing foreclosure and that she was stepping away without contesting the divorce. Before she left, she looked at me with raw regret and said, "You deserved someone who kept looking at you. I stopped looking, and I am so sorry." After her car disappeared down the road, I sat on the swing and watched the sunset over the lake. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt finished. The grief had finally cleared the ground for something new. Your consistency will never force an indifferent person to value you, and the only honest response is to remove yourself entirely. Today I run a small, quiet consulting practice. My neighbors know me simply as Tom. I tend a garden of sunflowers, and I finally have the peace of a man who has nothing left to prove. If this journey of reclaiming your self-worth resonated with your own life, please subscribe, because there are many more honest stories left to tell.